Good morning, good afternoon to a lot of folks, and everybody's getting settled and getting in, and we will get started in just a second. It's interesting when you turn into presenter mode and not being able to see all the participants, but I did get to see Nick and Michael jumping in, so excited to have you guys here. Like I said, we'll get everything kicked off here in a few minutes for the Sonar winter release. As Brian and I make sure we have full teas ready to go for this meeting. All right, there we go. We got a lot of folks coming in now, so we'll give everybody another, like I said, 30 or so seconds, then we'll get everything kicked off. Like we said earlier, if we lose Keith, we know he's going to be jumping back in the kitchen and taking one of those pots off the wall and start whipping us up a good dish.
Can only go so far in between without cooking. So,
love it. I know we got a few more folks coming in right now, so we'll give everybody a couple more seconds. Keith, I'm sure you saw in WizOps they were making the bet on how many times we mentioned Peloton. I think Justin Gavette set the over/under at 4.5, so we're already at 1. We'll see if we can keep it on the under.
We'll see how we go.
4.5.
Pretty.
You could say exercise thing that shall not be named.
That's
just throw everything off.
Keep it nice and vague.
Yeah.
He's already counted. He's going to count that as 2 already. So now we got 2.5 more.
Probably.
Oh, good stuff. Well, we'll go ahead and get everything kicked off. I know some folks are still coming in, so excited to have everybody here. Thank you again for joining our winter release webinar. Most importantly, the things we want to do today are let everybody know about some of the features we just rolled out, get everybody educated on that, but just as important, very similar to how we do our Shops Talks episodes with WizOps, we want to bring industry experts in here. Everybody should be learning, certainly not from me, but from some of the folks that are, the best in their craft and best in the game. So excited to have my good friend Keith Jones and Brian Skipper on, to sort of set the theme for what we're going to be talking about today. Again, releasing a handful of features is always something exciting. As we continue to build our platform, we're going to continue to listen to our customers and figure out exactly what we're wanting to solve for and what we're wanting to accomplish with how we continue to build Sonar. But more important than that, we want to make sure that everyone that is using Sonar, as well as folks that are evaluating it, understand the why behind this. And so when we look at the themes for what we're looking at now, we want to make sure we think of a couple things for you on the operations world to improve agility, increase confidence, and enhance collaboration. And so we'll go through exactly what that means here in a second, why that's important to us. But just as important to that, we always want to make sure, keep this interactive. We'll keep this light. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to drop them in the questions part of the webinar. That being said, before we get too far into the road, again, we're so excited to have Keith and Brian on. I've known Keith and Brian for years now. Both of y'all have pretty similar backgrounds, but also a little bit of differences in them. So we'll let you guys introduce yourself. Keith, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, thanks, Brad, for having me on today. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of talking about myself, so I'll be brief. But I'm a RevOps manager, one of 3 at Mural. My career has been an interesting kind of cyclical journey where I got my start in operations, working for a healthcare company when I like to say that I had zero business being in ops. A guy took a chance on me and hired me, a college dropout, because I had some decent Excel skills. And I found myself doing sales forecasting and shipping forecasting for this healthcare company when I was 20 years old. That same company I ended up being in sales in. And so I got to go from ops to sales and then back to ops when I joined the tech startup scene about 6 years ago. Since then, I've kind of built my career on Salesforce and other go-to-market technologies, which is where it's kind of landed me in my role at Mural today. As I said earlier, I'm one of 3 managers on the team. My remit is specifically on systems and go-to-market technology. So I have 2 colleagues, one who handles kind of insights and reporting, another who handles compensation, planning, and strategy. And between the 3 of us, we kind of own our own unique areas within the revenue ops department. And I get the chance to, kind of write the roadmap for the systems and the tech stack, relying on my colleagues to help me inform what the go-to-market organization needs most.
I love it. It's been so cool again knowing Keith. I think one of the unique things is as wide as this ops world is and the Salesforce ecosystem is. I'm fortunate to have Keith, right here in our backyard here in Atlanta. But I've known Keith forever, and getting to watch him kind of grow in his career has been awesome. Two-time Sonar buyer, his previous company, and also at Mural. So excited to have you on, man. Thank you. Skip, we'll let you go now. Tell us about you.
Yeah, second role in sales operations. I started sales operations at Lean Data, and I was the only sales operation and was part of a team that grew until I joined here at Carta just this past year. And I run operations for one of the business units here at Carta. And our teams are kind of interesting because we have a team in San Francisco, which is where most of the RevOps team is, with a little bit of spattering in Salt Lake City for the Salesforce admins and developers. And what I find truly interesting is we have a team that's called DevOps or Delivery Ops that's really focused on the customer cycle as well. So it's very unique how we have admins in different roles in different areas. But my role is operations at Carta for the main component, which most of you guys probably have, which is the equity aspect and the 409A valuation team.
Fantastic. I think the coolest thing that, again, knowing both of you guys for as long as I've known now and watching you grow in your career, I think the thing that I see and I find most interesting is y'all both talked about teams. We talk about this often in WizOps and we have Shops Talk episodes. Sales ops and rev ops, we rewind the clock, fire up the DeLorean from 5 years ago, even probably when we all met each other, we were all kind of armies of one, maybe army of two if we're lucky, right? Even putting my rev ops hat back on when I was running rev ops over at Terminus, I remember fighting for budget. We had an episode about this recently about how to go fight for budget and understand how to grow these teams, and I love watching this come into fruition now with both of y'all managing teams, having this team aspect. Clearly there is a similarity there with why we're building some of the features we're building from a collaboration perspective on the Sonar side, right? So to sort of level set with everyone, when we think of the big three features that we rolled out and what we'll be diving into today, Chrome extension is the first one, and we'll jump into it here in a second. Potential issues. Again, putting our team hat on, we're all rolling our sleeves up together and configuring Salesforce and making changes on a daily basis. How do we make sure that we spot any potential issues where I might break something that Keith built, Keith might break something that Brian built if we're all on the same team? How do we stay aligned on that? And most importantly, how do we understand how this is evolving? Craziest thing in my mind, this is talking about our timelines feature. Things change constantly. How do we document this the right way? How do we make sure we know how these things are changing in and out? And so the first thing we'll look at is a Chrome extension. While we think about this as a feature, it's something that, we've talked to so many of our customers, both of y'all have given us so much great feedback on how we can make Sonar better. And I think when we think of the common denominator about what Sonar is providing, clearly it's support inside the Salesforce ecosystem. Why isn't it working inside of Salesforce, or why aren't we living inside of Salesforce? So this was our first, first feature that we really start to ingrain our product back into the Salesforce ecosystem. So, nothing like a live demo. And so here we go. We're going to jump in there. I love that an anonymous attendee also, by the way, asked a question. Are you on a Peloton now? No. I've thought about it though. Don't get me started. I've genuinely thought about being on a Peloton for one of these seminars. So, the example we walk through here, and this is going to be very similar to a lot of the ones that we've talked through with a lot of our customers, shown to both of y'all. Actually talking with someone earlier this week, a good friend of mine, Eric Martin over at Vanta, was talking about, hey, how do we change stages? If we're going to go from 7 to 5 or 5 to 7 stages, it's a common thing that we go through on the ops side. We hear our VP of sales or marketing say that. We know what those steps look like, right? We jump into the back end of Salesforce, we come back here into Object Manager. And when we think about our Chrome extension now, Keith, we'll get your opinion of this in a second, because I know this is something that you've been asking for a while, ever since seeing, Sonar in the very early days, is how do we start to incorporate some of this action-oriented procedures into Salesforce? Well, now as we're in the back end of Salesforce, you can see the blue, our blue logo, our submarine following you around. So with one extra click, now Sonar is inside of Salesforce. Now you're getting this reference point that you have references and pick list values, and even if you have your tagging piece set up. And Brian, I know you're big on the tags, and so this first step of bridging this gap between our application and Salesforce has been a tremendous help. And of course, to really dig in, one more extra click gets you into the application. Here, we really get to start doing our work, understanding what our current pick list values are, all of our automations and references when it comes to formula fields, validation rules, even down to process builders and Apex classes. So I'll pause there. Keith, this is probably one of the things that I know from an early customer standpoint, asked us for. How is this, impacting you now on a daily basis as we've released it? How's it making your life a little bit easier?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, Brad, something I've been asking for a while from the Sonar team. I'll put it pretty simply, right? It's the exact same premise that our stakeholders go through when we ask them to use a new technology, right? And this is not just for the people on my team or my peers on RevOps, it's for myself as well. Sonar is still a separate application. Of course it is, which means it's another tab I have to open, which means it's another tab I have to remember to open. It's a step in my process that I have to remember to do. And I like to think that I'm pretty good at my job, and my career has rewarded me because of the skill and talent that I've accumulated over the years. But I'm still human at the end of the day. There are a lot of times where I'm moving maybe faster than I should, or skipping a step here or there, cutting corners, or just trying to get shit done faster, right? The reality is now Sonar is staring me in the face. That's what I like the most about it. It's a constant reminder to be methodical and to be mindful of, hey, am I potentially just trying to get something done quickly to get it off my plate, off my desk, and out of mine? Or am I, potentially going to create more work for myself if I don't take the time to slow down and make sure that I'm doing this correctly? So I'm a big fan of it for that reason. Just easy, simple access right there inside of Salesforce. But more importantly, just as the kind of friendly, constant reminder staring me right in the face as I'm doing my job.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, I know you've been using it just now. Consider we released it a little over a week ago, but already been using it a few days. Curious to see just functionality wise, how that's increasing a little bit of the efficiency on your side.
So what I like is when you're doing change management, the backend for system admin, you can see like, hey, this is where it's being used. These are the tags against it. I probably utilize the tag feature first and foremost in Sonar. That way I can see what the downstream impacts are to other systems, especially coming from a previous company, very tech heavy. And even here at Carta, we have a lot of integrations, and one field could have downstream impacts to 3 or 4 systems that I haven't even thought about. So being able to see that these are the tags where it would impact helps me plan for that as well.
Yeah, you're spot on. I think, this kind of brings me back to a lot of times when we're talking with customers on, what is the value of bringing Sonar on board to begin with? It's like, well, and we're going to get into this with the issue management side of it, but we want to prevent issues. We want to be able to do our proactive research. And one thing now that we're allowing for to do that with the Chrome extension is, it is that, Keith, to your point, that constant reminder. It's kind of following me around inside of my admin panel, allowing me to click on it and understand exactly where these dependencies are. And Brian, again, to your point, tags will show up as well. So it's a perfect way for you to really start thinking about understanding the complexity of your tech stack. We all move fast. I run 100 miles an hour. Mitchell on my team, who's making configuration changes all the time, is running 100 miles an hour. And while we're confident in what we're doing, increasing the level of visibility for us to make sure those changes are accurate is so important. And I think, sort of segueing into, our next feature when we think about potential issues, right? We've talked about this, so much between the three of us who are prepping for this webinar, but also just in practice. So often we are building internal rapport with our stakeholders. Who are our stakeholders? Sales, marketing, customer success, finance, ultimately end users of Salesforce. And they rely on us to make sure that what we build is accurate for them, is working for whatever business need they need. Again, we look back at a lot of this stuff, we make changes often, and for better or for worse, sometimes things break, and we're making these changes and we don't know exactly what's going on. And so the way our potential issues feature was built is to help our users understand if something's breaking, how quickly can we get this fixed? Again, if the name of the game for us is build rapport and build confidence with our team, we want our team to have a lot of confidence in us. And so keeping the light on, the wheel spinning very fast is really important to us in operations. It's truly a KPI of ours. So, increase confidence, work faster, eliminate the frustrations. Now, to level set with everybody on the webinar, the way the feature actually works, as we're syncing down your metadata on a daily basis, we're always taking the sort of before and after picture, and we'll be able to show that in the timeline feature here in a second. But when we recognize a piece of metadata that shows up in potential issues, really that means that that piece of metadata is not active or the current version in Salesforce. The best example of this is really looking into validation rules and pick list values. And so, again, as we think about this in a live, true form live demo, we'll jump back into Sonar, and what you'll find on our dashboard is our issue summary. And so, as you're logging in every day, you'll see your issue summary up here in your top panel. And this is also going to start coming to you in email format. Right around the corner, we're going to start integrating this into Slack as well, so you and your team can Slack and collaborate about it. But here in this example, and I'll be honest, this was a real true form example that we found with one of our customers as we were bringing value to them. For better or for worse, we've all put this validation rule in place. We've all had a closed loss reason for COVID-19. And I'm not kidding when I say this is a real example. What ended up happening, and for those that are kind of looking at this issue summary and figuring out, wait a minute, what is this trying to do? Essentially saying when you mark a stage as closed lost and the pick list value reason is COVID-19, we need to have a follow-up date. And you think about how a VP of sales is going to leverage this. Think about how a marketing professional is going to leverage this. They're going to sit here and say, cool, if we had that follow-up date, I can start running campaigns to it. The VP of sales can start forecasting that deal to a different quarter based on the follow-up. They were excited, but we know the budget was frozen. Y'all have heard all of the conversations inside of that. Well, inside of this potential issue, when we dig into it, what we're finding is that when we think about the context of the pick list value, why it showed up as red. Well, again, Sonar is not recognizing this exact pick list value. And so before we start to go in and start to try to figure that out and how to fix it, obviously anywhere in Sonar is a refresh that you see the blue Salesforce cloud takes you right to that entity. So if you already know how to fix this, great. Hit your blue cloud, go right into Salesforce and fix it. But let's do some research first. That's what Sonar's here for, right? Let's understand why this broke. And so if we actually look up loss reason in our quick search, the first thing that we're going to find, and again, we're finding that this pick list value COVID-19 isn't being recognized. Well, when we look at these pick list values, no wonder. We don't see COVID-19 on here. And there's a good chance that someone from an admin perspective changed it to COVID or coronavirus, or just in this case, deleted it altogether because we're not seeing it there. Now, I'll leave it over here to the experts here. Why is that important, Brian and Keith? Well, if that validation rule is not firing correctly, data quality issues, right? So when we think about how this issue is coming to play, it's really helping our customers elevate these issues, get them resolved immediately before they hit go-to-market impacts. But Brian, would love your feedback on that, on exactly how and why this is important to your team.
Well, if you think about the pick list value and the validation, you're building for a real life example, we had a custom op that had a validation rule. The validation rule came up as a potential issue. And what you tend to find is you're building for the pick list values and you build the validation rule, but as you get real life feedback, you modify those pick list values. You don't always, again, think about the validation rule from what you've modified in that COVID-19 or COVID or what to modify or change it to. So what I did in my example is I clicked the little cloud. I looked at who the last modified was, let him know. The first response is, this is awesome. When do we get Sonar? So I then gave the individual on the delivery ops access to Sonar, modified it, changed it right there. The very next day on the change log, I could see that field was modified, or the validation rule was modified. It was slick.
Yeah, it's perfect. And again, the way that I think about these examples is, again, we're all running fast. We're all making changes. So much of what we're trying to solve for on the Sonar side is how we help our teams collaborate in this. Well, most importantly, if we can really figure out how to make sure that when we find something that's breaking, how do we fix it? We learn so much from what we break, right? Let's fail fast. We always all want to fail fast. So that way we can learn from it and move on and move forward. this is a great way of thinking about that. And Keith, I know you have a unique perspective of it about building trust and rapport with your, with your team and making sure lights on and wheels spinning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love this example, right? Because validation rules, I think for a lot of admins, they're one of the first pieces of declarative automation that you learn about, and maybe one of the last things that you think about as you start to advance your skill set, right? They're also double-edged swords, right? They seem really great out of the box, and they are in virtue, but they're extremely binary, right? If the conditions are met or aren't met, you're going to see some sort of experience, good or bad, for your stakeholder, for your everyday user. And to your point, Brad, like, yeah, you've got to build that trust with your stakeholders. And if they're running into issues using the Salesforce environment that you have curated, that has a potential to endanger that trust, right? And so here, this is a great way of potentially, seeing an issue before that bad experience pops up, right? Before the user happens to trip over this validation rule that you, in your pursuit of just trying to make the org better, have accidentally, undone something or created a conflict. And so if this helps me catch an error before the sales rep finds it and hits it themselves, happy days. Because that's one less conversation I have to have. We're like, hey, we're sorry that you ran into that. We found it. We fixed it. We obviously want to have an open, kind of transparent communication with our stakeholders, but the fewer times that I have to take them away from their job of going out and generating revenue, the better off we are as an organization. So I love this feature. I'll take it any day.
Yeah.
Just one more way of making us proactive rather than reactive.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is one of those revolving topics that we talk so often about in our community, right? We all play this role in operations of strategic and tactical. And think about, Keith, I know you mentioned, I don't want to take our go-to-market team away from generating revenue, but at the same time, we can all be selfish here for a second too. We're all tasked with very strategic things. And when things like validation rules causing errors break, we get pulled away from whatever strategic initiative we're working on, and we get right back into the tactical, roll up our sleeves, let's go and fix this. And so if there's anything that we can do to proactively prevent these things from happening, as well as call them out and get them resolved quickly, I think that pie chart in your mind of how much of my day is tactical versus strategic, that wedge of strategic continues to grow. So, and last but not least, man, time flies, we're having fun. We're already 22 minutes into this thing. When we think about timelines, this is where, we can obviously start to put together potential issues and timelines. I think that's kind of a no-brainer, right? Like, hey, we made a change to this validation rule. Why did it cause this potential issue? We can go back in time now with our timelines feature and look at that. But just as important to that, I think when we think about our team perspective, again, I want to focus on how we're building these RevOps teams and sales ops teams. Again, we're all running fast. We're all making changes. And there's not a lot of ways for us to capture and document these changes that are happening. And so the thing that we want to accomplish with our timelines feature is, simplification of collaboration, reverse these breakages, and improve accountability. Keith, I know you just recently brought some more folks onto your team, and you're watching them every day, how they're making these changes into Salesforce, how are they making big impacts. I think the timeline feature is going to do that. And again, no time like the present with doing live demos. We'll jump into it. And we'll eat our own dog food here. We use Sonar here internally at Sonar. Of course we do. And so when we think about our timelines, we have Mitchell on our team who's running our RevOps, as well as doing some of our sales engineering. Him and I are typically the only folks that are making changes on a daily basis into Salesforce. Do him and I talk and collaborate? Of course we do. Are him and I both running 100 miles an hour and making changes everywhere? And sometimes we forget to do this? Of course we do. We're human. And so even in this real example, I'm changing my dates from just taking a look at the changes that we made this week. So far, cool. We've added 2 fields, we've added pick list value, new validation rules, and we've modified one. It's like, interesting. And I think this is one of those things that we've all wanted, and we just never had a chance to actually see it in a product or in action. But now we get to look back retroactively and see, look at that. We've added new fields. We've modified this one validation rule, and I can see that he's changed it, from unsure of timing on deals, just unsure of timing. This is so valuable to me, not only to help make sure that our org is squeaky clean and running at a right rate and not breaking, but now Mitchell and I get to start retroactively looking back on Fridays, we have time set up and we look, what all did we change? How are we modifying? How are we eating our own dog food? How are we optimizing our tech stack? This is one of those features that I think as we look back in time, we all have trouble justifying budgets, making sure that, we can go and, hey, we've made a ton of changes. I need a new Salesforce admin. We all have that use case, right? I think this is going to be one of those times that we are able to actually quantify it. But Keith, I know you've been using this in practice now with your team. Love to hear your thoughts and feedback and how you're benefiting from it.
Yeah, I mean, the team is the best real world example I can give, right? And it's kind of close to what you were talking about with you and Mitchell, right? Like, yes, you're both collaborating, and yes, you're both in active communication, but you're also moving really fast. I just hired a guy in December last year to join the team. Turns out, he and I were only one time zone apart from each other, but we have two very different approaches to just kind of work life, when we work, when we're online, when we're offline. He's more of a night owl. I am not. I'm a morning person, right? So we need as many things as we can to stay kind of connected and up to date asynchronously. And this is something that's helping us, right? I do not have to Slack him and ask him, hey, did you make that change that we talked about yesterday, late last night? He may still insist on Slacking me because he's that awesome and wants to make sure I'm aware, but I can go into Sonar and I can see the change was made, see when it was made. I can see it was made by him. That's huge, and then on top of that, at Mural, we do have a lot of trust that happens within the organization. And as terrifying as it might sound to some other admins out there, my team, systems within RevOps, we are not the only ones with administrative access to Salesforce, right? IT has admin access, marketing ops has admin access. There's a lot of trust there, but if that trust were to be betrayed, or if just a mistake were to be had, we have a documented record of what happened, when it happened. And, if someone accidentally made an error, that's fine. We'll fix it. But you better believe we're able to fix it a heck of a lot faster because of this.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's the name of the game, right? Uptime. Let's make sure that we're staying efficient, fixing these issues. Brian, I know you have a use case as well here, being relatively new to Card, only being in a few months and seeing how these things are evolving. Love your thoughts on this feature specifically.
Well, I think what's great about this is we talk about how this tool impacts our immediate team a lot, but a lot of times when we make these changes, it does impact other stakeholders that use technology, especially the first to mind is marketing operations, who is managing Marketo. So a lot of these changes and a lot of these validation rules can impact a sync user if you haven't excluded them from your validation rule or something else. So if you can give access to the team that sits in the marketing role, then they can see the change log as well. So you're working lockstep, not with just your immediate team, but also broader teams as a whole who you could potentially be impacting negatively or positively.
You're spot on. And that's the thing. I think when we think about just this downstream impact and how far it trickles down to the organization, people realize these things. Look, we've all been in operations. People in our organizations know that we're we have the keys to the Salesforce castle, and they're not bashful of coming over to our desk or now throwing a new Zoom and saying, hey, this thing's broken, fix it. Knock, knock, knock. I don't care what you're working on. Come fix this thing. When we're able to analyze it in a much more succinct and meaningful fashion like this, our efficiency is just so much spot on. Mitchell, again, on our team, had a really unique, I don't say archaic use case for this, but how was he solving for this prior? Formula fields. Formula fields are dynamic. And if you go in and make one small change to a formula field, and you don't know that one executive is looking at that total contract value, TCV formula field, and it's MRR times 12 plus, onboarding fee equals TCV, you make one change to how that thing is done, and congratulations, you just took your company from $10 million recurring revenue to $100 million. You're like, oh crap, I need to fix that formula field. But what was the previous formula? Mitchell was like, what I used to do to myself? I used to copy the formula field out, Slack myself the formula field, and then that way I made a change. And heaven forbid, if I ever had to change it back, I had a previous copy. Well, now, again, we talk about this so often with our customers about documentation. This is one of the first steps for documenting all of these changes into your org. A lot of stuff, obviously, around the corner for us when elaborating and making that documentation more holistic and making it more easier for you and your team to document. But it's very much one of those first steps to it. couple of questions. I know we're right at the top of time. We'll spend the rest of this time for anybody, excuse me, on the call that has any other questions. Feel free to pop them into the questions part of it. Good friend Matt Eck just asked, is it possible to mark these potential issues as resolved as you're investigating them? Absolutely. The best way to do it is obviously resolve them. If it is something like what we reviewed with a validation rule, you'll want to go ahead and make the change to that. And then on the next sync, and again, since Sonar syncing on a daily basis, it won't show up anymore in your potential issues table. I don't know if Nick's still on. I believe he is, but you're catching up with Nick Swider at Brick. He was saying, this is now my new inbox zero. Essentially, like log into Sonar every day or look at my daily email that tells me if I have potential issues. If not, I know I now get to really focus on the strategic part of my day and not have to worry as much about the tactical. So the other part to that, Matt, just to kind of give you a little foreshadowing into some of the next features we have, you'll be able to start marking those as resolved within Sonar. And more importantly, we think about this initiatives, feature that we're going to start rolling out. So a little bit of a teaser for what we have later on coming this year. You'll be able to create a little bit of a, sort of a project management type mentality of, all right, here's this issue. Here's who I'm going to start assigning to work on it, whether it be on my team, if I'm assigning it to Keith or Brian, things like that are around the corner, and you'll be able to resolve them in that fashion. So be on the lookout for some of those updates. Again, not to forward sell too much, but it's stuff that we're excited about when we think about how we want to help our customers collaborate more within Sonar. And so I think we had another question about just getting a copy of the slides and the recording. Everybody that's on right now, by all means, yes, if you have any, if you're on, you'll get a recording link to this as well as the slides that we have. And then of course, Vinny, good seeing you, my man. Hope all's well. Glad you're seeing the value in it and seeing that it's awesome. So looking at some other questions, Patrick, no, you're not a customer yet, but you like what you're seeing. How does Sonar fit into an organization that would move every change from a lower environment through a change set or metadata API? Great question. Keith, I know you do a good bit. I might put Keith on the spot as far as looking from sandbox to production. How would you use this in that capacity? I'll let you kind of shed some light, and I can follow up with you from there as well.
Yeah, well, I think again, right, like the timeline feature is huge in this, and from a documentation standpoint of work being completed, right? The good news is that we know that Sonar can be linked to multiple organizations. So I have Sonar hooked up to all of our sandboxes. Right now we use a dev copy, partial copy, and then obviously production. One of these days I'll be blessed with a full copy sandbox, one of these days. But until then, I can come in and just toggle to the sandbox and see if the changes I was expecting to see have been done. I can also do a record of the changes I made myself, make sure I've got a record of those. One less thing I have to document. But I also have some external consultants that help with a few things too, right? So all I got to do is just switch over to that environment and I can see them there.
Love that. Skipper, I know you've kind of been in the sandbox world as well as production. Don't know if you had any thoughts on watching these changes and even just the quick feature functionality of switching between orgs and Sonar.
So as of today, I've only had it configured for production, but what I want to do if future facing is we have a partial copy. Like Keith, we would love a full, but partial copy it is. And we have consultants that are doing change sets in there that we push to production. And I think to know what they're doing, what the change sets are there, especially as we evaluate certain things and you do the testing in the sandbox environment and you only give access to the sandbox, it would be great to start to see the change management that they're doing in the sandbox environment, so you can see all the little things before you push it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as we continue to make more changes and more enhancements to the platform, we're going to see a lot of that. One of the things, I know we're kind of getting to the top of time, but Skipper talking about tags. One thing that we can do with multiple orgs is we can migrate tags from one org to another. And so when you think about how's that important, well, Keith, both of y'all just mentioned you might have consultants, right, that are building things and changing things. And one of the things that we encourage a lot of our customers to do, as well as some of our consulting partners, is use Sonar as that source of truth for documentation. So walk through that real quick. If you spin up a new sandbox, give access to your consulting firm to use Sonar as well as that sandbox. Make sure they're going in and creating tags so you can see some of the tags that we have in our Trueform production org. If you have a consultant that says, hey, here's the 12 fields I'm using as part of my solution, and they build that in their sandbox and Sonar's hooked up to that sandbox, we can move those tags from the Sonar sandbox to the Sonar production org. So quick use case there as well, and it helps you understand how that might overlap with other tags as well. But there's a whole talk track around tags. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Patrick, follow up with you directly as well to make sure that we can answer that fully if that didn't help. But man, like I said, time flies when you're having fun. I know we're already 5 minutes over, but we'll give it another 20 seconds or so if anybody has any questions. But Brian, Keith, can't thank y'all both enough for jumping in and sharing your thoughts and sharing how Sonar's helping you on a daily basis. Our goal, as always, is to help you guys collaborate better with your teams, make sure your tech stack is running as smooth and efficient as possible, mitigating any risk, and making your job easier. So hopefully that's what we're accomplishing with these new features and what we have more to come later this year.
Thanks for having us.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. Appreciate it.
Of course. Well, appreciate everybody for joining. Looks like we had a lot of folks jump in. So excited to follow up with everybody here. Again, if there's any questions as far as this release or just in general about Sonar, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, obviously via email. Hopefully everybody, it looks like everybody on this call is at least in WizOps. So you all know how to get a hold of us. If not, that's shame on me for not knowing how to get a hold of you. But we'll talk to everybody soon. If there's anything we can help with, please let us know. But again, Brian, Keith, thank you both for jumping in and telling us how Sonar's helping you.
Right on.
Okay.
Glad to be here.
Take care. Have a great afternoon.
Have a good one.
See you, everybody. Bye-bye.